Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And this is a very, very special audio only drop. So this will not be on YouTube. This is an homage to all those OG Make It podcast listeners that started with us when we were only on audio, only on Apple, only on Spotify, only on Amazon, etc. And we have a real treat. It is producer extraordinaire, Gale Anne Hurd. And I'm not going to go into her bio because I go into it as this episode begins, and it is quite lengthy. So hang in there through the bio and enjoy this really in-depth and instructive conversation with producer Gale Anne Hurd. You're listening to Make It, the indie film podcast. Our guest today is the one and only Gale Anne Hurd. So who is Gale Anne Hurd? She is a leading voice in the entertainment industry, celebrated for her groundbreaking career as a film and television producer. Initially hired as an executive assistant to the legendary Roger Corman, she rapidly rose through the ranks to become head of marketing at his independent film company, New World Pictures. After co-producing her first film, Smokey Bites the Dust, for Corman, she launched her own production company in 1982. In 1984, Hurd produced her first film, the science fiction classic, The Terminator, setting the stage for her meteoric rise in the entertainment industry. Throughout her career, Hurd has championed daring storytelling, technological innovation, and the hands-on approach. In a predominantly male-dominated industry, she has been a trailblazer for women, as well as a well-deserved reputation as a creator of iconic cultural touchstones. And that's, to say the least. Hurd's extensive producing credits include a spectrum of Academy Award-winning films, with Aliens notably earning 7 nominations and 2 wins. She continued to leave an indelible mark with additional Academy Award-winning works such as The Abyss, The Ghost in the Darkness, Armageddon, and Terminator 2: Judgment Day, which was recently added to the National Film Registry by the U.S. Library of Congress. Armageddon and Terminator 2 both carried the top spots at worldwide box office in their respective release years, solidifying Hurd's enduring influence in the realm of blockbuster cinema. Her additional major studio credits include Tremors, The Relic, Aeon Flux, which starred Charlize Theron, Ang Lee's The Hulk, The Incredible Hulk, Alien Nation, The Punisher, and many others. Equally adept in the independent film world, Hurd's credits include The Water Dance, which won Independent Spirit Awards for Best Screenplay and Best Feature, as well as the Audience Award and Best Screenplay at the Sundance Film Festival. Some of her additional indie credits include the cult classic Tremors, which I did not know was an indie film, Safe Passage, starring Susan Sarandon and the late Sam Shepard. Her Watergate satire, Dick, starring Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams, another one I did not know was an indie film, celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. Seamlessly transitioning into television, Hurd replicated her success with The Walking Dead, an AMC series that holds the distinction of being the most watched television drama among the coveted 18 to 49-year-old demographic for an impressive 6 consecutive years. Is that it? Seems like Walking Dead's been on for 2 decades. And additionally reigned as the highest rated cable series for 7 consecutive years. Her influence extends further to other series within the Walking Dead universe, including its multiple spinoffs, including Fear of the Walking Dead, Dead City, Daryl Dixon, and the upcoming The Ones Who Live, among others. Hurd's portfolio also includes the anthology drama series Lore, based on the historical podcast, which currently streams on Amazon. So that's pretty cool for a podcaster like me to know. She has also served as an executive producer for 2 seasons of Falling Water, the USA Network, and on the USA Network, and Hunters on Sci-Fi, as well as numerous TV movies, including Witch Hunt, directed by Paul Schrader and starring the late Dennis Hopper, and The Wronged Man, starring Julia Ormond and Oscar winner Mahershala Ali. In the realm of nonfiction, so the bio goes on. This woman has done it all. In the realm of nonfiction, Hurd's contributions have been equally impactful. She has produced 3 PBS documentaries focused on Native Americans in partnership with Cherokee director Valerie Red Horse Mole, including True Whisperers, the story of the Navajo Code Talkers, and Chickasaw, I think that's how you pronounce it, or Choctaw Code Talkers. Forgive me if I butchered that pronunciation. Their documentary, Mankiller, celebrates the extraordinary life of the late Wilma Mankiller, the first woman elected principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, which earned numerous awards and screened at 35 film festivals worldwide. Wow. Her latest documentary endeavor is The YouTube Effect, an eye-opening documentary directed by Alex Winter of horror fame and Bill and Ted fame, which presents a thoughtful, troubling look at YouTube, a site with humble origins that has gone on to change how we experience the world. The film premiered at the prestigious Tribeca Film Festival and was released in the U.S. theatrically by Alamo Drafthouse Films. Beyond her role as a producer, Hurd is a sought-after speaker, lending her expertise to a range of topics spanning technology to gender equality. Her impactful insights have resonated with audiences at prestigious conferences and panels worldwide, including the Milken Global Summit, the Berlin International Film Festival, the Austin Film Festival, South by Southwest, the Toronto International Film Festival, New York Women in Film, and 2 International Women's Forum Global Conferences in Barcelona and Rome. Notably, her substantial contributions to the industry led her to her induction into the IWF Hall of Fame, so she is a Hall of Famer. Hurd has generously shared her expertise and perspectives at panels hosted by the U.S. embassies in Peru, Iceland, Georgia, Estonia, North Macedonia, and Zimbabwe, among others. She has also addressed audiences at the Euro Images Conference in Helsinki, Finland, as well as most recently in Tallinn, Estonia, at the Black Nights Film Festival, in the AVP Summit in, I think this is pronounced Trieste in Italy, representing Women in Film and Television International. Throughout her distinguished career in film and television, Hurd has received a plethora of prestigious awards and accolades, amassing an impressive tally of 23 wins and 2 nominations. Recent distinctions include the Producer Guild's David O. Selznick Award in Motion Pictures, the Charles Fitzsimmons Award for service to the Guild, the Visual Effects Society Lifetime Achievement Award, the Society of Camera Operators Lifetime Achievement Award, the Motion Picture Sound Editors Filmmaker Award, Women in Film's Crystal Award, the 2022 Locarno Film Festival's Best Independent Producer Award, the Cartier Award from the Deauville, I think I'm butchering that one as well, American Film Festival, and most recently, the 2024 Lifetime Achievement Award from the Online Film Critics Association. Ooh, that's a lot of awards. That's a lot of awards. Okay, to wrap up, in 2012, she was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. These honors stand as a testament to her exceptional contributions to the film industry and her unwavering commitment to crafting high-quality entertainment. And so, with that detailed bio, I give you Gale Anne Hurd.
Hi, this is Gale Anne Hurd. You might know me as a film and TV producer of such projects as Terminator, Terminator 2, Aliens, Armageddon, and the TV series The Walking Dead.
Gale Anne Hurd, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're really excited and happy to have you. You are a luminary. You're probably lived 3 lives in film, if not more than that. And there's so much that we could talk about. We have limited time today. Would love to have you on again to sort of talk about some of these other places. There's just no way to talk about your life and your career and everything in one podcast sitting. But because of that limited time, I'd love to just hop right in. You recently, this year, lost your mentor in Roger Corman. What's your favorite Roger Corman story?
I would say my favorite Roger Corman story is that I would not be a producer if it hadn't been for him. On my very first interview, I came in. You've got to remember, this is 1978. I assumed he was going to ask me how fast I could type, whether I took dictation. And instead he said, what do you want to pursue as a career in the film industry? And I realized that if I said, your assistant for life, that was probably the wrong answer. So I said, Roger, I want to be a producer. And he made sure that happened. And within 2.5 years, I produced my first film, Smokey Bites the Dust.
What made you pick producer out of all the sort of titles that had to have been running around your head at the time?
Well, I have degrees in economics and the film and broadcasting part of the communications degree at Stanford. And I realized that was probably the role that I was most qualified for.
Yeah, I'd say so. We're going to get back to producing. I'm a producer. Nick's a producer. I'm in the PGA. So I want to circle back on that with you towards the end, just to get as maybe even as a self-serving question or two to ask you, because I certainly would love to continue pursuing the career at the trajectory that you pursued it. What sets apart the best directors you've worked with, and what tools or behaviors do you suggest to filmmakers that are sort of looking to level up?
I think the most important aspect is to have done your homework, to actually have the skill set to succeed. I'm afraid that these days, a lot of people just call themselves a director, call themselves a producer, and they actually haven't earned the right to call themselves either. So I think everyone thinks there's a shortcut. There are no shortcuts. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is you have to have a vision. You have to be able to prioritize. You have to work well with other people. You have to inspire. And you have to be a team player.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about filmmaking is the collaborative nature of it. I think people will literally like spend a day doing PA work on set and never leave film, even though they had a job as an engineer or they had a job as a scientist or as a doctor. They're like, I want to do this. This is so collaborative and so fun and so human. This next question might pull out some of the detail in your previous answer, which is, what are the biggest mistakes that you've seen producers make? And what advice would you give them to avoid those mistakes?
I don't work with other producers for the most part. So I would say that it's hard for me to say what mistakes they made because on my project, while I have potentially other producers, I'm generally the one, because of my experience and my age, that I'm generally the one that's steering the ship.
Are there any mistakes that you see filmmakers or people that are sort of hovering around the film industry, just considering our audience of independent filmmakers and young filmmakers, things they could learn from your sort of vast experience in this space, where you're like, that person wasn't quite ready, or they are sort of pretending? How was that exposed to you, I guess? Maybe I can reframe the question that way.
Well, first of all, if I ask a director how they're going to shoot a particular sequence, and they have no clue, and I have experienced that before, they're not ready. You don't get there and essentially call action and cut. You have to know everything, including, okay, the actors are going to be entering this scene. Do they enter from left to right? How do they leave? How are you going to block it? Where are you putting the camera? And a lot of people have no clue. And yet they think they're able and ready to direct.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. One of the things I've said on this podcast a few times is what we do in independent film sometimes is even though the movie isn't ready, we just barrel ahead with sort of principal photography, right? Like the movie isn't there, the team isn't there, the skill set isn't there, but you made a promise to everybody that you would shoot on, August 8th. And so, dadgummit, you're going to shoot on August 8th, even though your main cast dropped out.
You shouldn't, if you're not ready and the film's not ready, I don't understand why people would be plowing ahead. It's hard enough when everything goes well to embark on something where the best you can do is okay. You cannot shoot for okay. You have to shoot for great. And if you don't have pre-production, if you haven't tried to solve the, problems you might encounter during pre-production, you're going to make enormous mistakes in production. But to give you an idea,
okay.
When Jim and I were making Terminator, Linda Hamilton sprained her ankle a few days before we started shooting. And we were supposed to start with all of her physical action sequences, and we had to reschedule. But Jim had storyboarded everything. So there was huge responsibility on art department and locations because those had to change. But otherwise, we were completely prepared.
Yeah. It's discouraging when, and I've been on a few of these indie sets where it's like they're figuring out, how to shoot with this light or how to shoot this scene at this location. You already know that, the movie's sort of doomed from a taste and quality standpoint. And it's heartbreaking because those people are really talented in many regards, but they didn't set themselves up in pre-pro to be successful. Just as I didn't have this one planned, but just based on your feedback, what's your perfect sort of pre-pro time? Are you a 18-month gal, 12-month? What do you think?
There is no correct answer to that. Every project is going to have a different answer. For example, when you're making a TV series, you very rarely get more than a week, 2 weeks maximum with the director.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you have to live with. 18 months is, how do you make a living if you got an 18-month pre-production, you're not getting paid.
Right.
So I would say the only exception to that would be something that requires enormous visual effects, and you have a release date, and you have to meet that release date. So you need to get the visual effects started early. Mm-hmm. That would be the exception to the rule.
That's very, very good feedback right there. And it's true because, in TV, your directors are always changing. And as a producer or a showrunner of a show, I'm sure you have to sort of manage the expectations of how much that director can come in and actually change. You probably have a better relationship with your DP than with those directors on a show, who maybe you're allowing them to change the show, 2% at most. You don't want them to change the whole flavor and tone of the show that you set up with your DP. Is that fair to say?
It is 100% correct, yes. And often we have two DPs and we alternate so that one can be prepping with the new director that's going to be starting the next week. And you've got, the DP who's working on the current filming episode. But yes, I mean, I've encountered that in the past when someone, comes onto the show and decided, oh no, this is not this is not a TV series. It's entirely handheld.
Mm.
And they want it to be entirely handheld. Well, you can make exceptions if there's a reason for it, but not just because, you want that on your reel.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And that's exactly why they might want it. It's sort of vanity to a degree. You've been the tip of the spear on some of the biggest films in history. And what an amazing thing that is to say and to have in your bio. That being said, I am curious, what is your approach to P&A or marketing?
Well, when I worked for Roger Corman, I was the marketing department for New World Pictures. So I created the campaigns for everything from his, low budget exploitation films to Ingmar Bergman films and Francois Truffaut films, Volker Schlondorf. So I had vast experience in that. And I think it's incredibly important to understand how you want your film marketed so that someone doesn't impose it upon you. And Jim Cameron also had incredible experience. He created the key art for numerous campaigns when we were working to get the Terminator made. So it needs to be part of your vision. The whole idea of the marketing for Aliens, when we decided that it was not going to be it was not going to be sort of a 10 Little Indians contained horror film. It was going to be a combat film. Was the tagline, this time it's war. And that prepared the audience, and it also prepared the studio and their marketing team to sell the movie we were making to the audience.
Yeah, that is a very, very powerful piece of copy. And one thing I preach all the time, and producer Papa Bear and producer Joe in the background might roll their eyes at this, but it's like the importance of copywriting. I know we're in the digital age. I know we're in the video age. But if you have a skill set where you can sell things with words, you have a superpower.
Absolutely. And that starts with, the pitching your project. You need to know how to pitch it. You need to know if you've got 10 minutes, how do you pitch it in 10 minutes? If you got 20 minutes, how do you pitch it in 20 minutes? And it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. And I think the only way you can pitch effectively, we teach a pitch workshop at festivals, is to do what you said earlier, what you said Jim did earlier, which is know everything about your project so that you're not really memorizing, but you're just talking about the thing you're so passionate about. Steve Jobs had a line similar, which he said, if you need slides, you don't know your product.
Well, these days, if you're pitching something, we always have visuals because pitches these days are over Zoom.
Yep.
And looking at talking heads can become incredibly boring. So if you do have visuals that can communicate your project, I find that that's a bonus.
Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying don't have visuals. I'm saying I think the point Steve Jobs is making is if you're leaning on those slides so that you can read the information, right? I think it was partly a dig at Microsoft PowerPoint anyway. But I think what he's saying is if you don't know your project or your product well enough to just be able to talk about it, and you have to read off your own slide to project that communication back to the audience, then that's not good. Right? I agree
100%. Absolutely. And you have to be prepared for any question, including, who do you think is the audience for this? And about marketing. How are we going to market this? And if you're not prepared for that, you're likely going to get a lot of passes.
It's a great point. In preparation for this interview last night, I opened up my file cabinet and pulled out a bunch of the prospectus I've been sent over the years, and I have them printed out. And I save a lot of stuff because I like to sort of learn. I was told this thing a long time ago, this piece of advice, which is that, people don't need to be told, they need to be reminded. And so I was sort of reminding myself of who even I was back then and some of the things that I thought were really awesome or were going to be true and ended up being so far from true in the prospectus that it's laughable. And you're spot on. I mean, there's so many things that I read last night that were like, they really believed this was going to be the best way to market this. And so did I. And it turned out that was so far from true. So I think also knowing how you're going to market it, and then do you actually know what it means to execute such a thing is critical as well. And is it possible? Or are you just sort of talking out of both sides of your mouth there?
Well, that's why I think one of the big mistakes people make these days is that they are not prepared. They don't have the skill set. They haven't developed the skill set, and they think they'll just learn on the job. And I was lucky that I worked for Roger Corman and that I did actually make mistakes on his dime, because I made mistakes producing Smokey Bites the Dust so that I didn't make them producing the Terminator. But at the same time, there is no question that when Jim and I went in to meet with Film Finances, the company that provided the completion bond for the film, we could answer every question they had. For a woman producer back then in the early 80s, I really had to have done my homework because there was already a great deal of reticence for a woman to produce, especially an action, adventure, sci-fi horror film.
Do you know Linda Nelson, who runs Indie Rights?
No, I don't.
You and her would be fast friends. You guys would be pals. She came up as everything stacked against her woman in the 80s, trying to make it in Hollywood in the industry. And you guys have a lot of things in common. I just was reminded of her when you said it, because it's so true. Some of the things we enjoy today and we take for granted, like if you were Black, if you were a woman, it was really hard. I mean, and now I think we even take like veganism and vegetarianism for granted. Like, if you told someone in my community that I grew up in, Gail, that you were not eating meat, you would be ostracized. You'd be like the weirdest person. And I grew up in the South in Tennessee. You would be the strangest person alive that they had met in the 80s. And now that's just normal. And so we've come a really long way, but it's a really great point that you bring up, and we'll touch on it here down the line. I know you stay on top of things. You stay very innovative. Are there any new forms of marketing that you're sort of enamored with or you feel are super effective?
Well, obviously, social media is having an enormous impact. There's no getting around that. I'm not on TikTok. I probably should be, but I don't have the bandwidth. So, you really need to figure out how to reach your targeted audience. What are they watching? What are they looking at? What are they responding to? So there is no one size fits all.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I'm not on TikTok. My staff is on TikTok, so that my company is on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok. And it started sort of as a paranoia about, sort of the origins of TikTok and what they're doing in the back end. But one of the things I've noticed is that musicians their careers are being broke on TikTok the way that they were on YouTube a decade ago. And I can't tell you how many. I like to pay attention to what young people are doing on their phones, what they're buying, what they're interested in, just for the same reason you mentioned, like where are the eyeballs, who's paying attention to what and why. And because I have 3 kids and they all live in the house with me, I get to really pay attention and see what their friends are doing. And I've had like 7 people come up to me and I'll say, hey, where did you hear that song? And they'll say, oh, TikTok. So it's always the answer. TikTok is how they're finding songs. They're just getting little clips of songs in TikTok, Gail, and then they turn around and buy that person's music or that one song now, maybe instead of the album like we used to do when we grew up. But they'll find that one song and sort of play it until it's kind of lame to play, I guess. Like they really will wear it out. But it all starts sort of on TikTok. I think if you have an original soundtrack that goes with a film, you almost have to start with TikTok. I feel like Barbie did that with Billie Eilish and some of those other tracks on the soundtrack. They started at TikTok and then expanded from there. What is the best piece of advice you received in your career? And you've had so many people mentor you, be around you, so many smart people, some of the best and most talented people in the world. I know that's a tough question for you to pull out a singular piece. So if you want to give more than one, that's okay too.
Once again, it goes back to Roger Corman. Everything goes back to Roger Corman. When I was producing Smokey Bites the Dust, I was on the mixing stage. We only had 3 days to mix a full-length feature. In order to do that, back in antediluvian times, yes, there were dinosaurs still roaming the earth. It wasn't digital. So, everything was cut on film. There were things called pull-ups. You had to, there was an overlap for real changes because it was film that was being shown in theaters. So it was really important, if you were going to maximize that time in 3 days, that you have all those reels we were going to mix in order prepared. Well, the sound supervisor did not have them in order. And I started to have a meltdown. And what I didn't realize was in the back of the sound mixing theater, Roger Corman had come in. And he took me aside and he said, "Now, Gail, I know you care deeply about the film and my money and the schedule, but remember, it's only a movie." And that goes against the whole Roger Corman canon, but that's actually who he was. So I calmed down and I realized, okay, you know what we should be focusing on? We should be focusing how to solve the problem, not point fingers, right? Because pointing fingers is not going to help us get through this problem. So we did, and we finished on time and on budget. And then, the second was also Roger Corman after the Terminator came out and was a surprise hit, both critically and while I was at the box office. He took me to lunch and he said, "Now, Gail," he always started every conversation with "Now, Gail." "This is a town that likes to build you up and then tear you down. So I want you to know that this film is not a fluke. People will try to tell you that it's a fluke and you won't be able to do it again, but you can, and you will. And I have 100% confidence and faith in you. So whenever someone is trying to shake your confidence, just remember this conversation." And I've never forgotten it.
I needed to hear that myself. That's great for me to hear.
It's great for us all to remind ourselves, because no matter, let's look at just this week. We're seeing a really great filmmaker who had a rough patch, and everyone, the pundits were all saying, "Oh, his career is over." I don't want to mention names. And then he had a huge comeback. And that surprised people. Well, it shouldn't have surprised people. Talent is talent. And yes, we all go to bat and we swing and miss, but we go back and bat again.
That's right. That is right. And it's so easy to throw stones at the person in the arena. What's not so easy is to be the person in the arena.
Exactly. That is incredibly well said. And it's hard for people who are struggling, who haven't made it yet, to feel sympathy for someone who has succeeded. Yeah. But we're all human, and being torn down like that, where it's literally a huge negative chorus, is difficult on everybody. And we should all remember that.
Hear, hear. That is spot on. I want to ask a question, again, going back to this audience, and we'll play a little game. It's a short game. And here's the game. I am your intern, and we are in some version of Swimming with Sharks. And you have to get me up to speed really fast. What are the first three things you would teach me if I was trying to be a producer?
The first thing is don't fake it.
Okay.
Never fake it.
What does faking it look like?
Well, I'll give you an idea. When many years ago, I had an overall deal at 20th Century Fox, and Barry Diller was heading up the company at the time. Mm-hmm. And I'd be in a meeting, and someone would knock on the door, and they'd come in. And I didn't realize that I was actually sitting there during a time when he had another meeting. But anyway, he'd tell me to stay. I really wanted to leave, but he'd tell me to stay, and he'd say, "So," and this is when they were setting up the Fox TV network. "So, what does the research show about, audience reach and all of that?" And the person would say something. Mm-hmm. Barry never asked a question he didn't already know the correct answer to. So when people lied, he called them out on it. And I got to watch that. And boy, was that a good lesson. And he ended by saying, "If you had just said, 'I don't know, but I'll find out,' everything would have been fine."
That's huge. Yeah, it's really big.
So don't believe in the fake it till you make it. Do not believe in that. Don't believe in move fast and break things. That's how the world got to where we are now.
And for those not initiated, that's one of the calling cards of the Silicon Valley tech industry bros and gals, if you will. So anyway, okay. First thing, don't fake it. Second thing, what are you going to teach me? Your lowly intern assistant producer.
You're not ready to be a producer. You have a lot of homework. You have a lot you need to do, and there are no shortcuts. So essentially in fact, just yesterday, I had a Zoom with my current crop of interns. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I said was, one thing really rubs me the wrong way when I say, where do you see yourself in 2 years? And they say, I want to be you. I'm sorry.
They've insulted you, but they didn't realize it.
Well, and you have to be willing to do anything that's legal. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I was top 1.5% of my class at Stanford. And there were times when Roger would say, you've never been on set before. I was running the marketing department.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me to be a PA, which included emptying the chemical toilets in a motorhome. It's probably the one skill that would be incredibly handy in a zombie apocalypse. But I never once said, I'm too good for this. I have a Stanford degree. So I did that.
Going back to not faking it. Yeah.
You know what? I learned skill sets. And by the way, do you know what can stop a film? The toilet in the Star's motorhome getting backed up and overflowing.
Yeah, that's true.
That can stop a movie. And so anyone who says to me, I won't do that, won't work for me. As I said, as long as it's legal.
Yeah, pay your dues, folks. And then, okay,
and don't think you're too good to do something, because, we need to have a lot of tools in our tool chest, and we need to know how to use them.
Yeah, it's a great point. It brings me back to another life of mine. Several years ago, I worked for a healthcare tech firm, and I had a young sort of new hire in my mind come up and ask for some mentorship. And I sat down with him at lunch, and he said, well, I've been here 6 months, been doing a really good job. And, no one's even approached me for a promotion or a raise yet. What do you think I should do? And he was having sort of an existential crisis. And I was like, you've just been here 6 months.
Yes.
What are you talking about? It's like my Don Draper moment. That's what the money's for, that scene. It was like, it's ridiculous that you're counting the months you've been here. You've been here 6 months. Like, just go back to work. There's a long path and there's a lot more to learn. So it's a really great point. Okay. So far, for those keeping score on the other end of the speaker, don't fake it. You're not ready. And then what's the third thing?
I would say the third thing is, don't think that you can have a career in this business without being willing to give up other things. This is not something you can do 9 to 5.
Sacrifice.
You have to sacrifice. You also have to persevere. I am still trying to figure out how you can have it all. I don't think it's possible. Even at my, even at this juncture in my career.
What does having it all mean, though, Gail, in your mind?
It means having a balanced life.
Okay.
A work-life balance. There are some days when I have it, and there are other days when I don't.
Yeah, that's something else I probably need to hear. Although my counter to that, it's not even a counter. I won't position it that way. I will tell people that you think that I'm working a lot, but I actually enjoy it.
Oh, that's it all. You have to love what you do. If you don't love what you do, why did you choose an incredibly difficult path in an industry that is trying to reinvent itself?
Yeah, it's a really it's a really important point, because I think there are so many, especially in independent film. I think this is a really good point, this last one, because there are so many in independent film that really try to get the work-life balance and sort of have it all before they've made it or before they've done anything significant that defines their career. And therefore they're sort of violating that sacrifice perseverance standard that you set forth. Okay. So let's go back. The answer again for those folks listening, number 1, don't fake it. Number 2, you're not ready. And then number 3, be prepared to sacrifice and persevere. Those are all really powerful things to remember, especially if you guys out there are aiming to produce a film. A lot of times in indie film, you're the writer, director, and the producer. That seems like an impossible task to me. But I know some of you folks, you're out there doing that. And let's face it, I guess nothing is impossible. So that's very, very good, Gail. I appreciate that. You said everything goes back to Roger Corman. And so I am going to go back to Roger. He shot Little Shop of Horrors, the original one, in 2 days. That sounds insane to me. Did he ever share with you, or what did he share with you about how he accomplished that?
He really didn't. But at the same time, the interesting thing about the film is that Chuck Griffith, who directed Smokey Bites the Dust, directed Little Shop of Horrors. So wow. we had a more luxurious, I think, 20-day schedule on Smokey Bites the Dust, but we did not have a lot of time, considering there were car chases and many other things that Little Shop of Horrors did not have.
You mentioned that you made a bunch of mistakes on Smokey. Can you name 1 or 2 of the mistakes you remember?
Well, I stupidly thought that I should literally do everything. So I'd be preparing, I'd be, there at Chuck's shoulder all day on set, and then I would pay out in cash all of the extras at the end of the day. I did not know how to delegate. That was a huge mistake.
Was not being able to delegate.
By the way, I was 100% wrong. Chuck Griffith wrote the screenplay. Roger directed Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, got it.
Chuck was a lifelong friend of Roger's, and you're absolutely right. Roger did direct it, but no, he did not share any on-set stories with me.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for that correction. And you mentioned in the preamble to this conversation, none of us are fallible. So I think are infallible, rather.
None of us are infallible. Yes. But yeah, Chuck wrote the script, and, but he did direct Smokey Bites the Dust. So that's the one I worked with him on. So at least I got that right.
Would you say it was hard for you to delegate because you'd like to be in control, or because you were nervous about instructing people and leading people, or had anxiety about that?
I really did not have the skill set to know how to properly give direction to other people. Even though, I wasn't directing the film, I should have been directing the production.
Right.
And producing the film. But believe me, you learn quickly. And I had previously been the assistant production manager on Battle Beyond the Stars. Okay. But I was only responsible for the art department and visual effects, both of which my collaborator was Jim Cameron. And believe me, if anyone knows how to get things done, delegate, and be the best possible partner, it's Jim Cameron. From day one. I mean, when he was building spaceship models, I thought he was running the model shop. He was not running the model shop. But as I told Roger, he should have been. And then within a few days, he was the art director of the movie.
Yeah, it's fascinating because every person that I've ever met that is uniquely talented, it shows up. It's like you don't have to go searching for it. It's not like in a rom-com where the female protagonist takes her glasses off and all of a sudden you see a diamond in the rough. Like it really stands out. Like people who are uniquely talented tend to just stand out.
Yes.
It's a great point and thing for people listening to remember. Is there sort of a starter kit that you would suggest for someone, let's say, who is net new, they're going to start tomorrow and they're really serious, they're ready to make the sacrifices, approach with humility? Is there a starter kit? It could be books, it could be software, it could be, anything. What do you think you should start with in your toolkit?
Volunteer.
Okay.
No, volunteer on student films, volunteer on, I'm not one who believes that you have to go to film school, but you certainly have to have experience on set. Most people making student films need as much help as they can get. And the smaller the crew, the more you'll learn. At the same time, I'm 100% pro-union. Mm-hmm. So I never want, a project that isn't a student film to be non-union.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if you can, as a sidebar, settle a debate that I had with a producer recently. And I just come from the Produced By conference that was on the Fox lot this summer. And so shout out to the PGA. It was a great event and a wonderful weekend. And a lot of the producer buddies I have out there were just telling me that it's really important to be part of all the unions and shoot union, because everyone else wants to siphon from this industry. They want to take from it. But when you're in a union, it shows that you're in it and willing to give back, meaning, your contributions, those dollars go towards health insurance. They go towards, making sure that that person that in IATSE can have a family and a house, whatever it may be. You're not just taking from it. And my producer friend said, well, the worst thing you can do is have your director be DGA or try to be WGA, because I won't hire him. I can't afford him. So what is your thinking there?
There are low budget agreements, and I would be very surprised. And I would, I would strongly suggest going union. The reason we have a middle class in America is to a great extent because of unions. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important to do whatever we can to support these organizations that provide people with health care and benefits.
Yeah, and they sort of fight for, they fight for your contract, they fight for your pay, they'll arbitrate on your behalf, they'll do all sorts of...
And they make sure that you are working the hours that you are legally, and if you are working beyond those hours, that you're getting overtime. Right.
I know we're running out of time here. You mentioned this earlier, that this is sort of an industry that can beat you down. You have to be so tough. It's important to be an optimist, but it's a tough industry to be an optimist in. And I think I'm paraphrasing even a quote of yours from the past when I say that. And so if you've ever been in a dark place before in this business, how did you get through it? And what tools do you suggest to people to get through times where they're being rejected, where things are really tough?
Well, I think first and foremost, make sure that you have friends that aren't just fair weather friends that are true friends who will be there for you when things get tough, and will celebrate when you do have victories. And that could be family. I know a lot of people, their families don't want them to pursue a career in entertainment. Certainly mine didn't want me to, and that made it challenging. But I had great friends. I had a mentor in Roger Corman, a mentor in Barbara Boyle, with whom I actually had lunch today, who worked with Roger as essentially the chief operating officer. And, there were people that I could always talk with who would be my boosters, who would be my cheerleaders. And then I would stop focusing on the problems. I'd go out for a walk. I'd go out for a hike. I'd do something that took my mind off of dwelling on how things weren't going my way. And I also find, even though I didn't do it back then, meditation has been incredibly helpful for me.
Any meditation app, or you meditate?
Any type. Any type. There's so many out there, but especially loving kindness.
Hmm.
Because with loving kindness, you have to start by being kind to yourself. You can't really be kind and loving to someone else if you're not kind and loving to yourself. And a lot of us forget that.
Yeah. I think that's another thing I needed to hear. So that's very, very good. And Gail, you've been amazing and so generous with your time. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet, see some of your work, anything you want to share about the ways people can research and learn more about you?
I'm pretty easy to find on the internet.
It's
and
true.
I
It's
have
true.
to remind people I cannot accept any submissions. So please don't. And I am on Twitter. I won't call it the other thing. And my handle is @GunnerGale because I'm an Arsenal Football Club supporter in the English Premier League.
Oh, I would not have guessed that. That's awesome. Fantastic. I love the European Premier League. Sadly have to tell you that I'm a Chelsea fan, but can laugh at me about that since Chelsea's been just an absolute shit show recently. So it is what it is.
As long as you're not Man City, Chelsea, not one of my favorites, but
not Man City. So we're good, right?
Yeah, exactly. We are good. We're good. By the way, as you probably know, Arsenal played in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium and in a friendly and beat Man United 2-1.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah, that was a couple weeks ago.
Shout out to Arsenal.
Right, thank you.
And you heard it from her first. Thank you, Gail. Take care. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.